Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Hannah.
And this week we're talking about sex.
Am I? I don't know yet.
So first things first, boring fact, but the legal age of consent for sex is 16, and that's regardless of gender or sexuality. The law is there to sort of protect you and keep you safe. So for example, you know, if a 16-year-old was having sex with a 13-year-old, that's illegal. But we do know that young people do sometimes have sex before 16. But the important thing to remember is you need to be ready and you need to feel comfortable.
That's very important, especially when it comes to like your first sexual experience, is really knowing and trusting and having like that mutual respect with your partner and communicating and talking things through, especially if you're doing things that you've not experienced before, and being able to talk it through and kind of set boundaries and only like go as far as you're comfortable, and like really check in with each other and take care of each other.
Absolutely. And also I think at school, a lot of people will be talking about, oh, why haven't you had sex yet? Are you still a virgin? All that kind of thing, when really they probably haven't had sex yet themselves. And it's important to remember that. There may be a lot of pressure, but it may not be true that they've actually done it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of peer pressure in school because people are talking about it a lot. But like you said, usually it's the ones that are talking about it the most that haven't had sex. I don't know what that says about me and my YouTube channel.
We'll just gloss over that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So obviously, you may not have had sex yet. That's completely normal. And as you've said, you have to feel completely ready with it before you actually, you know, have consenting sex with someone. But you may be discovering sexual feelings about yourself. You may be potentially exploring your body. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? Should you feel? Yes.
That is very okay. Do lots of that before you bring someone else in as well. I think that kind of having a sexual relationship with yourself, and there's kind of no age limit on that. It's kind of like entirely like your relationship with your body and like how you feel and your own sensuality and sexuality. But masturbation is very healthy and it's totally normal, and it's a great way to get to know your own body and your own pleasure.
I think that's really important. But also, I guess there's another thing that young people might feel scared about sex. They're just getting used to their bodies changing, they're going through puberty. Now they've supposedly got to get naked and start, it's a terrifying prospect.
Yeah. Like when you're a teenager and your body's changing, you just feel so self-conscious about everything. It's that shift between when you're like a child and you and your friends are all like naked in the paddling pool together, and then as soon as you hit puberty, it's like the clothes are on and they don't come off until you're like completely on the other side, like you're a fully fledged adult and you're like, I don't care anymore. It's a shame that people feel like so self-conscious about their bodies, and then that does impact on their like sexual relationships. For me, I remember even before I had sex for the first time, getting naked with like my boyfriend, and that being like this big thing where we just like experienced each other as we were, and not even like touching or anything like that. It was just like, okay, and breathe, and it was like the most nerve-wracking thing ever. I remember then that just making our relationship better, and it made me feel better about myself.
So we've talked about that fear and the peer pressure to having sex. But what about if you actually feel like now's the time, you're in a relationship with someone you want to have sex with? How do you sort of approach them about that? How does that conversation work?
It's not just one conversation that you have. Like you decide that you're ready to have sex, and then you have that one conversation. You'd hope you'd been having lots of mini sex talks like throughout the relationship. I think the first time you're having a sex chat with a partner, the best way to do it is in a non-sexual situation. So you don't want to be like fooling around and half naked when you want to have the discussion about whether or not you want to have sex, because then you're not necessarily going to be influenced by being like turned on.
And it doesn't mean you'll necessarily both rush into it. You may take a bit of time, but I think as long as you're sort of both on that journey together and you reach mutual consent. Don't forget though, if you are being pressured into sex and you're not consenting to it and you don't feel comfortable with it, that's wrong and it's not okay, and you should talk to someone about it. Obviously, there's not just one way of having sex. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of different sexual acts or sexual positions. How do you know what's right for you?
That's like tricky to figure out at the beginning, because most sex education and most kind of information that we get about sex is always like penis and vagina, and that's like real sex. But there's like mutual masturbation, but then there's also oral sex and there's anal sex, and all of these things are like real sex. And just because you like consent to one doesn't mean that you are consenting to all of it. And different types of sex that you have may differ depending on your sexuality or the gender of your sexual partner. And just because you're not having like penis and vagina sex doesn't mean you're not having real sex.
So we've talked a lot about real life relationships, as it were, but it is still real life, but online there's a lot of relationships going on and people are sending each other naked pictures or having sexual relationships online.
Yeah, and even long distance relationships as well.
Yeah.
I think that's all great, to be honest. I think if you are in a relationship emotionally or sexually with someone who is not like physically in the same place as you, then things like sexting, phone sex, or like webcam sex are all like still great and a way to like connect with the other person. But again, just make sure that you have the other person's consent and you're doing things because you're comfortable with them and you're communicating there about like where your boundaries are. And when it comes to online things where there's also like physical evidence of like stuff, you need to set rules and you need to set boundaries. That's really important. Another thing that is very important, especially when it comes to sexting, if it's like nude pictures, is that you have to be over 18, because any pictures that are of you naked and you're under the age of 18, then they are technically classified as like paedophilic images. So just don't break the law.
Yeah. Be safe. Thanks so much for coming to see us, Hannah.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.